I am excited to introduce you all to Colin Beavan. He is a writer, speaker, consultant, coach, and activist who continuously works to help people all over the world work and live with balance, purpose, and impact.
It's like, I can't keep just making history books. Like, the world's falling apart. So how can I take my talents and my skills and the things that I'm passionate about doing and turn them in a way that helps the world? One way, it was about how does an individual live environmentally. But in another way, it was about what's the purpose of life, actually. What it means to live an impactful life, that's an interesting question, because I think the answer depends on who you are. I can't tell you how to be impactful. You know, when you're in trouble, the way to get out of that trouble is to look for ways to serve others. Life itself is a...
Welcome to My Kind of People. In this episode, I am excited to introduce you all to Colin Beavan, who has so many wonderful titles. He is a writer, speaker, consultant, coach, and activist who continuously works to help people all over the world work and live with balance, purpose, and impact. During this episode, we'll get to know more about Colin and his impactful work. I greatly admire how much positive content Colin puts out into the world and how he addresses social change with a balanced and mindful approach. I'm so grateful to welcome him into my community. He's definitely my kind of person. And if you don't already know of Colin and his inspiring work, then I know he will soon be your kind of person too. So welcome to the podcast, Colin Beavan.
Thanks, Meg. It's nice to be here with you.
Oh,
what a nice introduction, too.
Thank you so much. I really
trying to butter me up.
I am. You're probably the first guest to cotton on so quickly. I'm going to have to be careful. So thank you so much for your time and energy today. I really appreciate it. And since first reading your book, No Impact Man, a few years ago, it really has encouraged me to improve and continue on my own journey to live more sustainably. And it's also made me think further about how I want to show up in the world and serve others. Your work really makes me hopeful about the future and what we can achieve as individuals and also as part of a community. But before we learn more about your work, Colin, I would love for this community to learn a little bit more about you as a person. So where have you grown and flown? Where did you grow up, or where was your hometown? And where would you consider home now?
Well, I was actually born in Manhattan in New York City, but I wouldn't say I would live there till I was 8, till my parents split up. And then when they split, my sister and I moved with my mother to a little countryside town called Westport, Massachusetts. It's just south of a peninsula on the East Coast called Cape Cod, which many people have heard of. It's a beach town and an agricultural town, and it was a little bit of a lonely place to grow up, but it was also a kind of a cool place because there were woods to explore and a beach to be at, and it was just a great place.
Nice. And where in that journey did you start to develop your passion for living a more impactful life? Has that always been a main focus for you?
Well, a couple of things. I mean, I think that, well, first of all, I've always had some sort of a spiritual yearning growing up. You know, the big questions were, you know, I don't know if you remember or had this, but I remember being little and trying to consider they would say that the universe was infinite in size, and I would try to consider that and wonder what that meant, and it would almost literally hurt to think about. Like, I would try to think about it and I would have to stop. And so I had like lots of questions always about that kind of stuff. And when I was young, I dabbled in psychism and all that kind of stuff. So I had this kind of spiritual thirst or quest. That was one element. Then, you know, the research shows that people who support doing things about climate change overwhelmingly grew up in the countryside. And that's because people who live in the countryside are more likely to have an intuitive understanding of our connection to nature. So there's, urban kids, for example, might not even understand that a strawberry grows on a bush. So growing up in the countryside informs a lot of environmentalists, or having a connection to the countryside certainly does for me. And my grandparents, I was very close to my grandparents. I saw them nearly every day, my mother's parents. And they were Depression era, the ones that would save the paper shopping bag from the grocery store, and save the newspapers, and save everything for some sort of reuse, and my grandfather was on the Conservation Society thing, so there's that. And then the last thing is that I've been part of the 12-step recovery movement for a really long time, and really the central tenet, in my view, of the 12-step recovery movement is that you have to give it away to keep it. That means that actually the real, when you're in trouble, the way to get out of that trouble, especially emotional or psychological trouble, the way to get out of that trouble is to look for ways to serve others. So these ideas of growing in the countryside, having a spiritual yearning anyway, being part of a movement of people that believe that, the only way to help yourself is to help others. All of those things were philosophies and ways of being that informed my work moving forward.
Yeah, amazing. And you're so right. It surprised me. I haven't heard about that study before, that if you live close to nature, but that makes sense. Of course, you would have that more innate connection there as well. And what do you think it means to live an impactful life? And how do you think a more sustainable mindset can improve the way we show up in the world?
I mean, what it means to live an impactful life that's an interesting question, because I think the answer depends on who you are. It's a different. It's definitely an answer that I can't tell you how to be impactful, right? Or anybody else how to be impactful. I can encourage you to choose to quest to be impactful, but I can't tell you how. I think maybe I should just backtrack a little bit and say, so those people who don't know No Impact Man, what it's about, because it will give some context. So No Impact Man, I had written 2 books prior to No Impact Man. They were both history books. They were great. I loved writing them, and readers liked them, and they kind of made me squarely part of the New York literary scene and all of that. But I had this, it was shortly after the Iraq and Afghanistan wars had started, and there was news of climate change, and I was just like, I can't keep just making history books. Like, the world's falling apart. So how can I take my talents and my skills and the things that I'm passionate about doing and turn them in a way that helps the world? And I came up with this idea that I would write, a book about climate change and how all you people are driving SUVs and you're wrecking the world. And people just said, geez, yeah, that's all true, but what a downer. Who's going to want to read that? And so then I came up with this idea, well, wait, what if I just experimenting with living as with as little environmental impact as possible, along with my then wife and my daughter, in the middle of New York City. And I don't mean we recycled more. It was like extreme. We didn't use electricity for 6 months, for example. And that was No Impact Man. It was really a question. Really, it was in one way, it was about how does an individual live environmentally. But in another way, it was about what's the purpose of life, actually? Because life itself is a resource, so it was about the effective use of resources, and including life. So your question was, how do we make an impact, and what does that mean? What did it mean to live sustainably, and how do the two connect? So if you choose to live sustainably, that means that you're not wasting resources. In fact, to me, a definition of living sustainably is to use resources only in ways that improve your life and the lives of others, right? So I call that eco-effectiveness. It's eco-effective to use resources. Like in our world, right, we get on this treadmill where we go to work and do jobs we don't really like, and the payoff is that we get some money, and the only thing we have time to enjoy is the computer, the television, and going shopping, or now online shopping because of COVID, right? So we buy a bunch of stuff kind of as a consolation prize, not because we feel the stuff makes us happy. It's just like, it's the only degree of freedom we have. Well, I could get another power drill, or, you know, I could get another handbag, or I could get another coat, and then we get it, and we'd be like, great, I've got this coat, but then we're not really happy, so we go to earn more money to try to buy another thing that might give us happiness, which doesn't, right? That is not eco-effective use of resources. That's wasteful resource use because it doesn't actually make us or the planet or anybody happier, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes people say that environmentalists are a downer. They're like, you environmentalists, you think we human beings should just kill ourselves so that we don't cause an impact. I'm not like that. I just don't think we should make an impact that actually makes us unhappy.
Mm.
So the first question about, so to live sustainably actually lives, in fact, the word sustain means to bear the weight of, right?
Mm.
So really what we want is to live happily and joyfully and impactfully, right? In ways that don't harm others, right?
Yeah.
That's right. So that's to live sustainably. So it means to live a truly happy life. And then to have an impact. How does that connect to having an impact? Human beings are hardwired for meaning and purpose. Why is that? It's because, so meaning and purpose comes from helping other people, and it's not just like some pie in the sky thing. Evolutionarily, what human beings have in their advantage is they travel in packs.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they don't have sharp teeth, they can't run very fast. When they hunt together, and they're smarter together than whatever they're trying to catch, or they can build the shelter together, right? So human beings survive by being part of a community. That's how we grew up. So we get this nice feeling when we help others, because when we help others, it makes others want us to be part of the pack. So when we help others, it makes us feel like we're safe and we're okay, like we're going to belong, we're going to be part of the community and taken care of, right? Yeah. So making an impact is just about actually fulfilling that natural thing of actually truly helping others and being a good player, right?
Yeah. So well
that's
said.
a long.
No, so beautifully said. So much so that I think I'm going to have to return my new power drill, to be honest. I'm joking.
Drill whatever hole you need to drill, and then
take it back. Hey, yeah. Another bit of great advice there.
I mean, here's the truth. The truth of the matter is that you would think once you buy a power drill, you'd never need another one again. But I believe there's research to show that households have 2 and 3 power drills, and the reason is because it's easier to go to the store and buy a new one than it is to find the one you already have, which is buried under junk in your basement or your garage.
Absolutely. I feel like that evidence could be legit. I've seen it happen. But no, jokes aside, that's excellent advice. So thank you, and really, really well put. And as I've mentioned, your work truly has inspired me over the years. Have you had anyone that has particularly inspired you throughout your life? And was there anyone that directly inspired you to strive for positive change? I know you mentioned briefly that your grandparents had been an inspiration to you.
Sure. There's so many inspirations. Some of them, of course, are cliches. Like Mahatma Gandhi in particular, and Leo Tolstoy, because the reason why they're and Martin Luther King, and why and Desmond Tutu, but why they're inspirations to me in particular is that they believe in change through nonviolence, right? So to me, it's always been interesting. I didn't realize that at the time, but no impact means don't don't hurt, no impact, right? So no impact man could also mean, to me, nonviolent man.
Yeah.
We're in a time right now where there's so much anger and so much belief that, there are different sides. And the truth of the matter is that most of us actually want the same thing. Our approaches may be different, but we need clean air, we need clean water, we need food. We want to be around our loved ones. We don't want to be around people we don't like. We want what we want to get what we desire. We don't want to lose what we desire. Like, it's pretty much the same for all of us. And then somehow that's become a cultural war, when actually at base we want the same things. And my view is that there's no way for us to begin to ratchet things down if we are violent in our approach. And people will say, well, I'm a white man. People will say, you have the privilege of saying don't be violent, right? And that's true. Fair enough. I am not traumatized to the same extent as other people by the society in which we live, and so I cannot be violent. And that's what I choose. I choose that. I choose that approach because it's temperamentally correct to me, but also because it turns out that that groups who choose a violent approach tend to be overwhelmed and destroyed by the oppressors, and groups that choose a nonviolent approach at least survive until change occurs. So but also because I just believe that if I want to create a nonviolent world, if I want to create a fair, just world where everybody has dignity to pursue meaning and purpose, then I actually have to offer that in my attempts to change it. So I like Gandhi a lot. I like Leo Tolstoy, who was an anarchist Christian who believed that that the basis of Christianity was resist not evil. That means don't do violence, right? And he was actually a mentor to Gandhi. So those are heroes to me. But then so many other people. I have I have many Zen Buddhist teachers who are heroes to me. There's a Tibetan teacher named Lama Willa Miller. She's a hero to me. A rabbi named Steve Greenberg. He's a hero to me. People who have done work at the community level to improve their communities who are heroes to me. Lots of people. People who are awake and use that awakeness to help others.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of spiritual teachers there. So you'd said very much since being a young child that spirituality is there. Has that continued then to be a massive part of your journey, do you think?
Well, since I was, let's see, it's for 25 years now, I've been practicing as a Zen Buddhist. I practice with a Zen Buddhist. I don't necessarily call myself, I am a Zen Buddhist, just because I think I don't like us to separate ourselves, because I think that it's all different paths up the mountain, and so I don't like to say I am this or I am that, because if somebody asks me if I'm a Christian, I'll say, sure, yes. Do you believe in Judaism? Yes. But the spiritual path is at root. All of the spiritual traditions, all they're trying to do is create an understanding of ourselves as something bigger. As part of something bigger. Yeah. Like that these thoughts that go through our head that tell us that we are alone and have to take care of ourselves, and we have to hoard for ourselves, and if I have something, if my neighbor has something, that means I can't have it, so I have to keep everything for myself. All the religions, all they really are trying to do is be like, that's not it. Who knows what it actually is, but that's not it. So do that which is good, and don't do that which is bad.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, really well put. My background is I've been definitely going further on my spiritual path. So I've done a lot of Vipassana meditation, which is a form of meditation, and the teacher for that is S.N. Goenka. And something that really struck me in his teachings was he was saying, you know, all religions are welcome, but this teaching's not about religion, because we're all the same at the end of the day. Like you don't breathe Christianity, you don't breathe Judaism, right. You don't breathe Buddhism. Like everyone just has the breath, right? Everyone's just human at their core, and we're all kind of aiming for the same thing. So religion is absolutely welcome here, of all kinds, and you can absolutely bring your religion to the table and believe in it and keep it. But it's open to everyone, you know. So it's interesting, that idea of that saying I am and separating yourself, you know, it's kind of similar to his approach, in that at the end of the day, we are all human, and we all have our own, you know, human breath. And how we
lovely teaching.
Yeah, exactly. It really struck me at the time. And I love that you said something fairly similar. So you brought up your no impact year before, and it really is an incredible story that you shared. And during that year, Penelope Green from the New York Times wrote a very interesting article about your journey, and it was titled "The Year with No Toilet Paper," which was amusing to me, considering that's quite a humorous part of the book, of how hung up people were of asking questions regarding the toilet paper. I think, unfortunately, this year as humans, we've further proven our very odd obsession with toilet paper. I still don't get it. But I thought it was a shame to hear anyone had focused on that section, because having learned about your journey, I found there were so many more interesting experiences and lessons that were learned from your no impact year. What were the most meaningful lessons to you that you learned? And do you think there were any misconceptions when it comes to living sustainably and what people think that involves?
Yeah, I think there still is this misconception that, like I said before, about living sustainably, which is that we should make ourselves miserable for the sake of the planet, as opposed to using our lives effectively, which is what I said, like using resources in ways that are truly effective to make ourselves and people happy. So sometimes, so that includes progress, you know, this word progress. People sometimes think progress is to have better cell phones. You know, everybody's talking about 5G now, so we're be able to watch even higher definition television on our walkie-talkies, basically. But I figure once we can watch television at all on our walkie-talkies, we can pause on the further development of cell phones and maybe work on things like the million kids a year that die from drinking tainted water, you know, like actually bringing fresh and clean water to people. So you would ask me about like what feels important about No Impact Man, so about like the toilet paper. First of all, is this question of using this life that we have, these gifts of resources that we've been given, in ways that actually improve our own lives and lives of others. That, to me, is what means sustainable, right? Not better cell phones anymore, but clean drinking water, for example, you know. So that's one thing. But things happened during No Impact Man. For example, I didn't use cars or even subways or buses. Not that of course I like mass transit, but it was no impact, not medium impact. So I rode everywhere on a bike with my then 1.5-year-old daughter, and we would, when we didn't have anything to do, we would go out and we would say, we're going to go see what happens. And we'd ride around on my bike, and I happened to know a bike mechanic who had this dog named Scout. So sometimes we would stop there and play with Scout or whatever. And so sometimes we'd be in the apartment actually, and I'd say to my daughter, what do you want to do? And she said, let's go see what happens. And we'd go, that meant go on the bike and just ride wherever and see what happens. There was this way in which I discovered that when we slowed down and stopped using resources, that actually there was more joy in life. Like we think that everything's about convenience. My favorite author is Kurt Vonnegut, and he at one stage he was getting ready to go to the post office to mail some things, and his wife said to him, "Why don't you just get a fax machine?" This is back in the days where fax machines were a thing, and he said, "Well, if I got a fax machine, I wouldn't get to walk down the street and say hello to my neighbors, and I wouldn't get to flirt with the." He said, "I wouldn't get to flirt with the woman at the post office." And then he said, "The purpose of life is to futz around, and don't ever forget it." Right? So, there's a way in which all this convenience and making things more efficient is actually kind of taking some of the joyful experiences out of life. Like, how efficient is it to watch a sunset? Like, is that so there is just this big learning about the use of time, and also a learning about the importance of community and connection. That actually what we really want is connection. And there's a really interesting television ad that I often mention. It in the ad, what happens is there's a dad and two kids, and the dad is playing with the two kids. They have a remote control car, and then suddenly the remote control car breaks. Right, one of the wheels breaks, and the boys, all disappointed, and the dad's disappointed too because he's bought this toy for the kid. So then in the commercial, the dad gets in his car and he puts the broken remote control car in the seat next to him, and then the kid moves the remote controls from outside the car, and the dad watches what way the wheels are turning on the remote and runs his car this way and that way, right? And so basically, and the kids are all happy and the dad's all happy, right? And the idea is, basically the idea is, if you want to connect to your children, you should buy this car. But actually, if you want to connect to your children, you should just play with them.
Yeah.
So it has to do with time use. And it's a trick, you see, because so many, like men in our culture, a lot of them feel like failures as fathers. And why do they feel like failures as fathers? Because they've been taught to emphasize all sorts of things other than fathership, especially career, right? So there's this yearning pain inside some men about their connection with their children. And then so the ad like plays on that and says, don't worry, you can connect with your children by buying a car. And by the way, then you have to go to work more to pay for the car. So there's No Impact Man was about like coming to understand what actually makes life worth living. And that it's not that you can't surf without a surfboard. Surfing is a great thing, right? You can't. So we do need resources. You have to build a surfboard. But when it gets to the point where we think to connect to our children, we have to buy a car, that's when things are kind of getting lopsided.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's something that struck me in No Impact Man, of just like how present you were, and certainly about your connection with your daughter at the time was something really beautiful. And I love that, what's happening now, the idea of that. And even little things you think about when you went to the farmer's market because you were trying to look for seasonal food. That's another layer of presence. You can't just go to the grocery store and just mindfully pick up whatever you want, because you were making it your intention to find the things that were in season, and then not using the elevator in your apartment building. You're having to go up the stairs and you'll be aware of like, gosh, does this feel like effort today? How's my body moving today? I think you're absolutely right. Present and connection is so important. And I think that is a misconception that comes up with sustainability. And often people focus on what are you missing out on? A year ago, I decided to become vegan. That was just something of my own choice. I was inspired by a really amazing organization called Start the Wave that I was fundraising for. And so many people were like, gosh, I don't know how you do that. Like, you're missing out on this and you're missing out on that. Whereas actually, when they talked to me, I was saying, but I've actually gained so much. You know, I'm not asking
Right.
anyone else to do it, but I feel so much better. I've been more present because, again, I've actually had to think more again about what I'm eating. I started to be very, I wouldn't even have to think about it. I was eating the same things and I wasn't even focusing on if those things made me feel good, you know? And
No, thank you for doing that.
no, thank you. As I say, I was really inspired to do it from people like yourself and Start the Wave. And yeah, I've gained so much, but it's just interesting every time I have that discussion from someone who maybe isn't a vegan or is a carnivore. They're like, I don't know how you do it. You know, it's so difficult and you've had to give up all of these things rather than look at, you know, what have I actually gained from it? I don't see it as giving up something at all. Like I said, I personally learned so much from your journey in No Impact Man. And I think you were a trailblazer in many ways. It particularly made me smile when you were talking about you were getting free coffee at your local coffee shop because they were so amused by your reusable cup, which seems...
My jar.
There we go.
Not my reusable cup,
I have
my jar.
My little water bottle. But that seems so novel now, thankfully, because that has become such a normal thing. In fact, it's even encouraged. But I appreciate your efforts at the time because it seems like you were definitely going against the norm. But the part of the book that really struck me was when your no impact year came to an end. You'd achieved this massive goal that you'd set out to accomplish at the start. And it was quite an intense project. And your family had lived and changed in so many ways. And all of a sudden it had come to an end. And I really appreciated your vulnerability in sharing your thoughts after that year, because you'd literally been no impact man for a whole year. It had almost become like a persona. And you were starting to ask yourself, how do I continue with this life now without being a massive hypocrite if I don't keep all of these life changes up? And you were asking, how does one maintain that level of impact for the rest of their life? And I thought that was a really important question and also an important lesson in balance. How have you managed to find balance after the project? And do you have any simple starting tips for anyone who is perhaps considering living more sustainably?
I think, this takes us to an interesting place. So after No Impact Man was published, I got invited to speak all over the world. So first of all, in order to speak all over the world, I had to fly, right? So that's not no impact. And my situation changed. Like I basically was no longer no impact man, meaning I wasn't living inside that project, and I had to ask myself how I wanted to live. And at the same time, when I was going around giving talks, the fundamentally, so people were asking me a lot, like, how do I be no impact? And I would say, well, sometimes I would say, well, you can't, because I'm no impact man. Like, you can't be, like, I'm me, and so the role is taken. So but you should be, and no impact man is about me being like me, and so you should be like you, I would say, but be even more like you. Like actually live, have the trust in your own values and truly live according to your values, which doesn't necessarily mean to be sustainable. Like that's not the values which we prioritize, which a person prioritizes, maybe helping old people, maybe helping animals, maybe, there's all sorts of ways that people prioritize, and we can't do all the things. So sometimes when people ask me, well, how do I do that? My question is, first, what do you actually really and truly want to do? Like, because I did that does not mean you're supposed to do that, right? That led me to write my more recent book, which is called How to Be Alive. How to Be Alive begs those questions. Like, it actually, what it does is it looks at what actually, it says for what actually makes us happy, and how do we use those building blocks, And what are ways where we can look at different areas of our lives and be careful. And then that in turn, when I wrote that book, that because I'm in a whole different period of my life, what came out of that book is people started coming to me and asking me to help them individually to figure out how to live. That's how I started becoming a coach, that I'd been on this multi-year examination, in addition to various trainings and stuff like that. And now people come to me individually and in groups, and they ask, well, how do I accept this big question of how should I live my life? And then I help them to answer that for themselves. So it's interesting because I still, obviously I still am very much a part of the environmental movement, and I still do things to live sustainably, and go on protests and be parts of collective action. But my mission has changed, has expanded, is what I want to say, expanded to helping other people have the kind of impact that they're supposed to have in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so glad you brought up How to Be Alive. So it's a guide to the kind of happiness that helps the world. And I think it's fair to say that everybody is on this life quest to find happiness. It's a collective life goal. I'm sure if you ask people all over the world. But I think for a lot of people, happiness can often feel like it's hard to find, especially in current times where there is non-stop information from the world media, and they often focus on stories of division and hardship. And I think that can create a lot of fear in people. How have you personally managed to find happiness? And do you think it is possible to live a more balanced approach to living?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think it's important to ask if happiness is actually the goal of life. What is it that we want? So if happiness was the goal, why would we? I have a kid, and I love her, but having a child does not always make me happy. I mean, I'm not saying I wouldn't put her back in her mommy's tummy, but but I love her, and it gives me a deep sense of meaning and purpose. But some of my most joyful times have had to do with her, but some of the saddest times in my life have also had to do with her. So and certainly I couldn't use happiness as a guide to parenting. Like what makes me happy does not help me. That's not a compass point that would help me figure out how to be a good parent. So, I mean, we all know that parenting is about the parents putting their needs second, right? So, so there's this question about what is the place of happiness. And so it turns out that the research shows that people are more giving and help the world more and are more healthy if they happen to say that be able to say that they're happy, right? I would argue that those are more purposes, like to be giving to the world, to be resilient in the face of difficulties, those types of things. So happiness is a certain state of being, and by the way, it's transient. People say, well, the point of life isn't getting more stuff. You can't take that with you when you die. But by the way, can you take happiness with you when you die? we don't know, do we? So happiness is a transient thing, and all the same, it's. So what I like to say, it may be magnetic north, but it's not true north, right? If you aim for happiness, you may go in generally the right direction, but as you get closer and closer, you'll be far from the actual goal. But happiness does give us a certain type of energy, right? It does make us able to help ourselves and help others. So that's the first thing to say. Also, happiness in some ways is elusive in the sense that if you aim for it, you can't find it, right? So my own path has been more about finding equanimity in the face of happiness and unhappiness. Like learning to enjoy the sunshine and the storm, or at least be at peace with the sunshine and the storm, right? And for me, that's been about, for me in particular, that there are many paths towards that, but my path has been largely one of meditation and contemplation, or studying different types of spiritual literature, things that actually things that help me to have a true perspective on the arrival and the departure of happiness.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I think it's kind of ironic because we a lot of people are on this pursuit for happiness and wanting to try and find it. And it's like you say, the more we go after certain things, the more it kind of eludes us. And also life brings in that balance itself. I think it teaches you lessons on the way that whilst you're trying to find happiness, there is bad things. We are going to have hardship. We are going to have difficult emotions. It's certainly something that came up on a physical level when I was doing my Vipassana meditation. I was at a retreat for 10 days. And it's silent, so there's no talking, no eye contact. And I think by the 7th day, he was talking about the idea of things called sankharas. And it's almost like this deep-rooted thing. So the more we concentrate on a feeling, so for example, our body generates all these different sensations, right? You might have a burning sensation. It just naturally does that. Your body is a living thing. However, we attach emotions to it. So you might feel a certain burning feeling and you're like, oh, burning, that must mean anger. That must mean guilt. And the more we focus on those things or want that feeling to just go away, it's like a sankhara. Its roots get deeper and it becomes bigger. So I remember when you're there for 10 days and you're so sensitive and focused, I was just in my head, I was like, oh my goodness, I'm just building more and more sankharas. This thing's getting bigger. I've got this burning sensation. I want it to go away. This is awful. And then eventually you'll manage, like you say, to find that equanimity. You just try and observe it and eventually it will pass. But it was interesting because a few days later, we were getting towards the end of the retreat. And on the last day, halfway through, they will lift the silence so you can start talk to people and speak about your experience. And I suddenly got this sensation and I was like, oh no, like, oh, here we go again. This is going to be awful. And then it took me a moment to realize that what I was actually feeling was excitement. But I hadn't felt it in so long because I've been so focused on this burning sensation that I'd forgot that what excitement feels like. And it's that idea of balance. And I really experienced at a physical level that the more we focus on a certain energy and want it to go away, or on the flip side, happiness, craving it, I want this feeling to last forever. I never want it to leave. It's just not how life works or true nature. And actually it's that craving or that desperately wanting something to go away that actually creates unhappiness,
And the craving and wanting things to go away also never goes away.
Exactly. It's the idea, like the sankhara, of actually the roots just get bigger. You're just making the whole thing seem more overwhelming and go. So I think what you said was really important about, the more we go after things, the more it eludes us, and that idea of having balance. And as well as being a very talented writer, you're also a speaker, a consultant, and an activist. What do you hope your work contributes to the world?
So I have a group that I run. It's called, I do individual coaching, then I have small peer coaching groups, and then I have a larger group of 8 people that I run. It's called the Full Contact Group. And the reason why it's called Full Contact is the purpose is to help people to be in full contact with themselves and in full contact with others, right? So to be in full contact with yourself and to be in full contact with others means that you can actually feel compassion for yourself and compassion for others, right? if you can feel what's going on, if you can be truly in contact with yourself, with this moment, with others, then you can navigate life. You can be awake to life in this moment and help yourself and all beings, right? Mm-hmm. So that's if my work's about anything, it's about wake up, like just wake up. It's not about it's that the whatever it is you're trying to get. It's not about that. Here we are, like you and me, Meg. Here we are talking. It's about you and me talking, right? Just at this moment, the entire universe is focused on this point for you and me, and it's not about anything else but you and me talking. Wake up, And if you and I can wake up to this moment, and actually respond appropriately to this moment, right? Then, as opposed to, wait, when's that Colin going to stop talking? I need a cup of tea. But actually be here in this moment. Then we continue to act truly appropriately and build lives that are good for ourselves and others. So, my work is about helping people to be in full contact with themselves in this world.
Yes, and what beautiful and important work it is. And it's been so wonderful to witness how your community has grown over the years as you continue to push for positive change in the world and encourage people to connect more. What does the word community mean to you? And how has your own community changed as you've continued to grow as a person?
I suppose community means to commune. It means to come together as one, right? So I have several communities. I mentioned that I'm in the recovery movement, so I have a community of people there, and I have a community through my Zen practice. I have a community through activism. But community means that we can do together what I can't do alone, right? So yeah, it's that which I serve and that which serves me. What's good for my community is good for me, and what's good for me is good for my community. And it gives me a sense of belonging and peace. And yeah.
I love that. So beautifully said. And what has been some of the biggest things you've learned whilst growing your platform? And what is your favorite way of connecting with people?
My favorite way of connecting with people is just talking to them. I have an ambivalent relationship with social networking, and it's and the idea of growing my platform, I like talking. So that's why for me, so No Impact Man sold hundreds of thousands of copies, and it's been taught at many college campuses. For a long time, I ran a program called No Impact Week. all of that was great, and of course, I love all of that. But all of it was action at a distance. I couldn't really see. I knew that I had statistics to tell me things were happening, but I couldn't see it and touch it.
Yeah.
That's why for this part of my life, I like this personal work, interpersonal work that I'm doing, where I work with small groups and with organizations and with individuals, because I can actually see the change. So my favorite way to connect is, like we're connecting.
Exactly. Definitely. And it's part of the reason I wanted to do the podcast. I think especially in a year where there's been so much division, and also with the pandemic, people are physically having to stay home and can't connect. I really wanted it as an opportunity to still go out of my way to connect people, and also show people that, who is in your own community, who has inspired you in your life, who can you connect with, and who's in even your local community. I think people aren't too far away. They're not hard to find, and there's so many good things happening in the world. So I love that you came on the show today and that we like to connect in the same way, because I think, and I think every conversation you have as well changes you in some way, you know, and encourages us to grow. And you really do seem to be so outgoing in a lot of your projects, and you always try to find innovative ways to reach people and inspire positive change. How would you personally like to see your work continue to develop in the future?
What I'm working on, I say what I'm working on in terms of my future work. So I have a way of working in my coaching practice and in my groups that's based on, another hero of mine that I never mentioned, which is a psychologist named Carl Rogers. Mm-hmm. And he's passe kind of these days. You know, now everybody, when they talk about psychology, they're all into neurobiology and stuff like that. But he basically believes that all organisms naturally grow, right? That sounds kind of like woo-woo and whatnot, but the truth of the matter is he believes that biologically, if an organism is not currently frustrated, what it will do is grow its capacities in order to meet future frustrations, right? So it's just science, right? That's what biological creatures do. But how it looks in a human being is that they're working towards actualization, right? Yeah. That human beings want to actualize. He believes that in the presence of a loving, transparent, truthful individual, like when we have a relationship with one or a group of people who exhibit those qualities, which basically means there's no frustration there because that person is permissive of who we are, that we will naturally grow. And that's the basic attitude that I bring towards my coaching practice. And so what I'm working on these days is that I'm going to grow and train more people in Rogers' techniques to run coaching groups and to run. This is my brand of coaching. Is sometimes people coach to help people accomplish things, and certainly I do that too. But more, my coaching is aimed at helping a person grow their capacities, which helps them accomplish things, but it's more about their personal growth. So where my work is at the moment is about actually expanding my work, and I'm looking forward to being the coach and mentor to other coaches and mentors who run groups in the ways that I run them. And that could sound like a long way from no impact man, except that, as I said, my belief is that when a person is in full contact with themselves and in full contact with the world, they can't help but treat themselves and the world compassionately. So they will naturally go forward and do well by themselves and by everybody else too.
Yeah.
So to me, it's a revolution.
Yeah, I love that. And also what a beautiful sign of leadership as well, you know, and trust in your community as well, of like with these people that we have the same values. I feel like we're teaching in the same way. So let me pass on my knowledge. It's a gift, really. And then they can then continue to, it's that power of community, right? It all comes back to community, where that then community grows and everyone's community gets bigger.
Except that, if you don't mind my saying it, it's not pass on my knowledge that I believe in. It's let me help you to develop your innate capacities. I don't pass anything on, actually. It's already there for the other person. Yeah, I can't believe that it's hard for me to believe I have something to pass on, except for a belief that you have something already inside you.
Yeah, no, I didn't look at it that way. I like it. I like it a lot.
Thanks.
And this might be a simple question. It might be a very big question. What do you think we need more of in the world?
an easy thing to say. I mean, there's lots of things we need more of in the world. We need more equitable distribution of wealth. We need, you know, we need more prioritization of things like health and education, all of that stuff. But those are, everybody says those things. So what I'm going to say is we need more time. We need to be less busy. And the reason for that is because busyness is a kind of trauma all of its own, right? Yeah. The inputs are coming too fast for us to deal with them. And when input comes too fast, we start to become scared. Yeah. When we start to become scared, our brain functions. So the place of communication and cooperation and working together, the way that I talked about, which is what humans are good at, is how humans survive. That's in the prefrontal cortex, and it's slow. It operates slowly, and then at the back of the brain, down at the base of the head, towards the neck, is the amygdala, what people call the lizard brain. It's where fight, flight, freeze reactions are, right? And what happens is when we get traumatized, that part of our brain, it's much faster. It's less complicated. It moves. It pumps hormones into our bodies, cortisol, right, adrenaline, and it's much faster than our prefrontal cortex, right? Yeah. So when we are traumatized by busyness, when we don't have enough time just to chill, right? We naturally operate more from the lizard part of our brains. Yeah. And then we can't see the future. We can't plan for the future. We can't see what helps ourselves. We can't see what helps others. We just basically think either roar or run, right? Or hide, you know. You should put that on the video clip. She's my acting out roar and run.
Oh, I will. With no context.
So time is a thing, so to me, the 30-hour work week, 4-day work week, all of these things are actually really important. Another thing which you have in the UK, which we don't have in the United States, that I think that will help our societies to be able to turn themselves over to looking at an altruistic way of operating, actually, is universal health care. Yeah. While we're all scrambling to make sure that we're going to be able to go to the doctor, and we're so scared of losing our jobs, whether or not our jobs are moral or immoral, you can't, a person with 3 kids may not believe in working for a gun manufacturer, but what are they going to do about their kids' health care while their health care is tied to their employer? Right. So how do we live an ethical, moral society without universal health care? Yeah. So let's say time and universal health care.
Yeah, it's a really important point. And having spent a lot of time in America, I remember learning about that the first time, speaking to friends, of how many people, their first choice in a job is, does it have universal health care? It made me realize how privileged I am to be in the UK, to have a service like the NHS, especially in the time we are now. Oh my goodness, what a blessing it is. And so many people out in America, just their first question when looking at jobs is, will I get universal health care? Without being able to have the privilege of looking, is this a job that I would enjoy? Is this a job that fulfills me? Is this a job that will utilize my skills in the best way? So I think that's so important. And again, time, I think this year has been very telling of time as well. I think it's also been telling of how we spend our time. I think certainly with a lot of people having to work from home, or having a lot of things slowed down, we don't have the same hobbies or coping mechanisms that we might normally have in the year. I think I'd heard someone describe it before as, is it you don't have enough time, or is it's not your priority right now? Because all of a sudden, these things that we haven't had time for, we've been given a lot of more time, yet still somehow we don't have time for them, and I think part of that as well is, I'd mentioned it briefly before, we really are in this age of technology, which, like you said, in a lot of ways we think we're advancing. Are we advancing now, getting 5G? Or is this, a lot of it is that actually taking up so much of our time and thinking? I know certainly myself, I have a very difficult relationship with social media. It scares me in a lot of ways, and it's something I've found very quickly. It can take so much of your time and energy and brain power as well. There's just constant information coming at you, whether you like it or not, in such a short amount of time as well. We've developed. I feel fortunate that when growing up, still a lot of things was like, you'd get your news from the newspaper, or it would be there'd be one time in the day where there would be an important news announcement on the television. And now it's just constant. You've got news channels which they run the entire day. You've got notifications that come up on your phone. Even if you don't want to look at the news and you're on a social media platform, there's going to be a advert come up about it, and it really does worry me how much that is affecting our brains, and how much all of that information is overloading us, like you said. It's a lot. So time and universal healthcare, I definitely agree. I think we do need more of that in the world. And Colin, it has genuinely been such a wonderful opportunity to connect with you today. And I'm so grateful for all of the positivity you put out into the world. And I would love for more people to benefit from your energy and your work. So how can people support and follow your work further?
Yeah, so everything is, my webpage is colinbeavan.com. My Instagram is @ColinBeavan. My Facebook page is Colin Beavan. The only tricky part is spelling Colin Beavan, so I'll spell it. It's COLINBEAVAN, because people leave out letters or put letters in. So anyway, colinbeavan.com or @ColinBeavan is the
wonderful. So as long as you're spelling it right, very easy man to find. So thank you for sharing that knowledge.
And I'm always recruiting for the coaching groups, or have a waiting list for coaching groups. So anytime people want to go there and just send me a message and say that they're interested.
Perfect. Yeah, I was going to ask, do you have any upcoming events or projects that people should look out for?
I have the 2 active waiting lists that are running. One of my full contact groups is full and just starting, so there's a waiting list for that. I have a couple of coaching spots for this year, and also one of my small peer coaching groups getting ready to start too. So any of those. I'm not very good at advertising them all. I just kind of mention them on my email list, and then people email me, and that's how they. So go to my webpage, look and see what's there, but also people should just feel really free to inquire what's going on my email by emailing me. There's contacts at my contact form on my webpage.
Yeah.
Or DM me off Instagram.
Yeah, wonderful. And the email list sounds like a really good way to keep up to date. Thank you so much for your time and your energy and wisdom. You really have been so generous in what you've shared today. But before we say goodbye, do you have any parting words of advice that have served you well that you would like to share with the community?
Yeah, I say, it comes up with my coaching clients a lot. Pause.
Oh, pause.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you say pause. We say pause. Pause. PAUSE.
Yeah.
Stop for a minute. Just stop. Over and over again, just stop. See what's coming up for you. Pause. See what's coming up for you.
Yeah, it's so important, because it's something we so easily forget.
Yeah.
We get caught so up in everything that's going. Pause and stop. I love
But
that.
so to pause lets our functions go back from the lizard brain back to our prefrontal cortex, right? So pause, actually pay attention to what's going on around you, and then decide.
Yeah, it's almost like kind of like a reset in a way.
Yeah, reset. Boom. Just
Pause.
like that.
Boom.
Yeah.
Colin, you are awesome. I'm so very
You are.
grateful for everything you bring to the world. Thank you for leading with positivity. Thank you for continuing to show us how we can better balance our work and lives. Thank you for your innovation, and thank you for being my kind of person.
Thank you very much, Meg. Thanks for talking to me.